Without the stars. Welcome to Bigs3xy. Want to talk with Bigs3xy? I'm your host, Bigs3xy. Today's special guest is a Navy veteran. His name is Charlie. Charlie, let's get into this interview.
Alrighty.
All right. So, what made you want to get into the Navy? Or was that like family?
No, actually, I was the only one in my family that ever served in the Navy. Everybody in my family was in the Army. I was working as a warehouse manager for a regional animal feed company, and I realized that was where I was going to pretty much stuck, because it was hard trying to schedule finishing my degree, and work was a lot of work. And I wanted to actually work for the fire department, but the problem I was running into was I never had enough points. Like, I passed well on my physical agilities, I passed well on my psyche evals and everything else. But when it came down to it, I didn't have a college degree or military experience, so I was ended up just beneath the cutoff point to get hired on. So in June, I guess in May of 2001, I went and spoke to the Navy recruiter. Chose the Navy because I wanted to be a medic, and I wanted to be with the Marines, but the Marine Corps does not have its own medics, it uses the Navy medic. So I went and spoke with the Navy recruiter. I had previously signed up for the Army when I was in high school, so he was able to pull my waiver that I got from my vision and had to get that submitted up through there. And I found out in August that I had to go ahead and go, and I would be leaving June of 2002. The 9/11 happened. I lost two really good friends on 9/11. One at the World Trade Center. The other one was at the Pentagon. And so about a week after 9/11, I went over to our recruiter and said, hey, I want to step it up. I want to go in sooner. Since I was doing medic, as soon as it could get me was in February 2002.
Right. So in speaking of the 9/11, when you went into the Navy, you weren't actually going over there, or would you wanted to go?
I wanted to go over there. I was angry. I was mad.
Right. So how actually was that over in Iraq?
So I was kind of lucky because my schooling, I was actually an aviation medicine tech after my first year in the military. I had gone through basic hospital corps school in Great Lakes. Then I went to Field Medical Service School in Camp Lejeune, which is where they teach us how to be combat medics for the Marine Corps. And then I went to med school to learn aviation medicine. So I ended up being assigned to ship's company as their aviation med tech. So most of my time in Iraq, I got to fly in, maybe spend a few hours there and fly back out. It was definitely weird. That's the best way to kind of put it. I grew up initially in a rough neighborhood in Dale City, so gunfire wasn't an unusual thing to hear, but it's the amount of gunfire, the amount of people that you'd have this weird mix of people that wanted to see you, that were happy that you were there, and happy that we had gotten rid of Saddam, but you still had to keep a lookout for the people that weren't happy.
Right.
That felt like you were stepping in the wrong spot, not so necessarily because of Saddam, but because it's an Arabic country,
Right.
a Muslim
Basically,
country.
you really were stepping into the wrong spot.
Well, I mean,
like, for real, basically, you really were.
We were. I mean, the idea behind why we went there was great, but once we discovered that the weapons of mass destruction that were there had long since been either disposed of or shipped off, we should have cut ties at that point. But like, okay, we made a mistake.
Right.
And not let the politicians get involved either, because I think that was another big issue that we had around why it went on for so long. It's because the politicians got involved and big business got involved. Blackwater being one. I actually was offered a lucrative contract when I was getting ready to get out of the military. They were going to pay for me to go to paramedic school. I have to work for them for 3 years, but it was well over $100,000 a year to work for them. I would have done it if it wasn't for the fact that the reason I was getting out of the military was because my kids wanted more time with them, and I just wouldn't take it a lot. Right. I would spend like at least a year at a time over in Iraq if I went to work for them.
So did you actually go to a war?
I did fly into combat, yes.
Okay, so how was that? Like actually going
The first time I didn't even realize we were getting shot at until the crew chief said something to us. We were flying in to go get somebody that we thought was at a rear war hospital that had what we were told been shot in the stomach. As we were flying in, we took a round. Apparently, I didn't see it until the crew chief pointed out. He pointed over. He was like, "Look, you can see where the round went through, basically from one side of the aircraft to the other." And then we landed. Actually, found out the guy was not shot in the stomach. He was having appendicitis. Appendicitis.
Wait a minute.
So it was even better that where it was like, I'm all excited, like I'm gonna get to treat this guy for a gunshot wound. And it wasn't. It was more just keeping him stable so we could fly him back to the ship so we could do the surgery and get his appendix out.
Right. So did you actually see any like dead bodies?
Yes, both combat and non-combat. I saw more non-combat. I only saw 3 dead bodies in an actual combat area. We had 2 guys die on our ship. First time was actually when I first met the ship. About 3 weeks after we got on the ship, we had gone to Sydney, Australia. An Australian Navy officer had come on board and ride with us up to Townsville, Australia. And he was working out. We were in rough seas, and his hand slid off the port bar. He landed head first into a boat raft, pretty much killing him instantly. Yeah. We worked him. I mean, we tried to get him back, but the injury was fatal. Basically, both fragments had hit inside of his brain. The second one happened on my 3rd deployment. We were transiting from Japan to Hawaii on our way back, and he was a fairly overweight gentleman. He was trying to get ready for his next physical fitness test, because it was coming close around to the fall fitness time, and fall. Because that happened in August. So he decided that was the time to start working out, and was lifting a fairly heavy weight, and doing so his stomach expelled food, and it got into his lungs, which caused him to start choking, which caused him to have a cardiac arrest. We actually revived him on board the boat. Interesting story, I did his airway on his CPR, and this was before he had swallowed the food. So when we went to go shock him, I actually got hit with the food that hit me in his lungs.
Ew.
Yeah, it was gross. I wore it for like an hour. And it made me, to this day, I have a hard time with vomit.
That's nasty.
But we actually got him back. He survived the transit from Hawaii to San Diego, but unfortunately he had gotten a lung infection because we didn't have a surgical team on board. So we had offloaded him to Hawaii. We had no way to get in there and get the deeper food particles. And he succumbed about 2 weeks after we got back from a severe case of pneumonia.
Yeah. That's crazy.
But I saw lots of other trauma too on board. Like, bad thing about a ship is that everything's made out of metal.
Right.
So we had all kinds of. I had a guy that broke his hand, and a hatch closed on it, broke it in about 8 points of this thing. And we actually put rods, everything into his hand so that we could stabilize it so we could fly back. My first actual sutures I ever did was a guy that fell on non-skid, tripped over a line, and landed, split his underside of his chin, one side or the other, like a smile.
That's nasty.
Yeah.
That's nasty. So like going through all that and then coming home, how was your transition coming home?
So I never thought I actually had a problem. I only found out from my ex-wife when she pointed it out. Every time I would come home, the biggest thing that probably drove her insane was that I spent time checking the doors, checking the windows.
Yeah.
Because even outside of the combat zone, there was a lot of unfriendly countries that we visited.
Yeah.
And you're always told, you gotta keep an
Oh,
eye
hold
out.
on, wait. Let's go back a little bit because I missed something. Where were you actually stationed?
So I was stationed in San Diego
Oh, okay.
on the USS Boxer,
Okay.
which is an amphibious assault ship. So it has a flight deck like an aircraft carrier. It also has a well deck to launch triple ADs, which are take flight vehicles,
Yeah.
and the Hellcats, the hovercraft.
Right.
So we were stationed in San Diego. We patrolled the entire Western Pacific into the Indian Ocean.
Okay. No, man. All right. So back to the you transitioning home.
So first time she said something to me was when I scared her as we were driving. There was an object laying, it was a box or something, I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was laying in the middle of the road. And I like swerved way to the right to get around it and come back around. This was at the time of IEDs. So in my mind, my head was thinking, avoid that object. I
Right.
don't know what it is.
Bomb.
And she's sitting there like, why, we're stateside, why are you avoiding that?
Right.
And then she was pointed out to you that she was like, and she goes, you know that you get up 3-4 times a day to check the doors, the windows, relock the cars during that time? And I'm like, no, I'm not, no, I may get up once or twice to do it. She's like, no, three, sometimes 4. Further I got away from deployment, months further down the road, I stopped doing it as much. The other thing she said was, I was always kind of edgy. I wanted to do, as she called, baker stuff. Like I was trying to convince her that we should go jump out to do a camp. Like get my aunt to come down and watch her son, so we go do a camp and jump out of an aircraft.
Yeah, no. Yeah, but that's not normal.
It was that looking for that adrenaline rush, because even on a ship, even like on our deployment world, we didn't deploy into a combat zone. We just were patrolling the Pacific. You have this constant schedule of stuff that you're doing. There's things that happen on board that give you that little bit of adrenaline rush, to kind of keep you going.
Yeah.
Coming back stateside.
Well, I mean, like that's normal though for you, right? Because in your training, didn't you have to like jump off the ship into the ocean?
Yep. Yeah. And I even did it for fun in the shark-infested waters on the equator when they were like, "Hey, we're having a swim call."
No.
So I jumped off the aircraft elevator, and it sat about 30 feet above the water, and jumped out, swam around back to the back. They had the well deck open where it was like more like a little beach. You could come up.
Yeah, that's a lot. Cause I know a little bit about the Navy because, like I told you before, it's my brother. He was in the Navy. I don't know what part, but he went to Japan, and he was telling us about the training, and he had to do like crazy shit, like jump in the ocean, full gear, book bag on, all types of shit. Like I was like, nah, I would not have done that because I would have drowned.
Yeah.
Like I would have drowned. I can
So
swim, but I would have drowned.
they start you off in boot camp. So one of your, I want to say it was like the second or third week. I think it was second week. You go through swim qualification. So you jump in full uniform.
Yeah.
And prior to that, they teach you some things like how to use your uniform to float, what you should and shouldn't take off. Like you're going to take your shoes off and take them off and put them around your neck, because once you get to an area, especially in the Pacific, closer to islands, you're going to want something on your feet.
Right.
Coral and all that other stuff that you can step on. And then you have to practice floating. They actually have you float for a little bit before it, and then you practice climbing into a life raft after you finish your swim, and then you float. And then it comes back up again at the end of boot camp. We have what's called battle stations. The battle stations basically takes you through a full running of a ship, basically, from loading all the goods onto the ship, standing
Like an
watches.
obstacle course, basically.
It is. It's an obstacle course that's spread out, and they throw in all kinds of things that have happened on ships.
Like real life scenarios.
Yeah, real life scenarios. Bomb or been hit by a missile, and they tie it back to historical events for you. So
Right.
if you learned all these historical events during boot camp, they tie it back at the end
Right.
as to why you had to learn how to do this stuff.
Makes sense.
Like the most memorable and probably the most recent thing that had happened at the time was the one involving you had to transport an injured shipmate through a collapsed portion of the ship. That was to reference back to the USS Holt.
Right. And that meaning like like carry somebody all the way
Yeah,
through?
you put them on a
hell
gurney.
no.
And you were broken down into basically like squads, as they call it in other parts of the military, but there's basically a small crew together. It's 4 or 5 of you.
Okay,
And
so
your
it
sixth
wasn't
person,
a shooter, okay.
your sixth person was the injured person.
Right.
And it was like collapsed portions of the deck were down. You're going through small little areas, so sometimes you were having to scoot backwards, not being able to see. It was dark. They had lights flashing, intercom systems going off. What you would actually feel if it would actually happen on a ship.
Yeah. Okay, so like, was your training for the Navy different because you were like a surgeon or like a doctor in the Navy? So was it different from regular Navy training?
So you go through the regular Navy training at boot camp. At the time, Navy Corps School was located across from boot camp at the Naval Hospital Great Lakes.
Okay.
So we would go literally. I was literally across from the barracks I was in at boot camp. I could see it from Hospital Corps School, my barracks. That training there, they teach you how to basically be an MT, a nurse, and a little bit about sick call. They basically give you the basic knowledge for everything that you're going to potentially do as a general corpsman, like, you know, out in the field or on the ship, wherever you end up being stationed. Right? For those of us that are end up serving with Marines, which pretty much 80% of the males that go into the Navy as a corpsman, and about 50% of the females go get set from there to field home service, whether it's at Lejeune or out in Pendleton out west. I went to Lejeune because my next stop was to go down to Pensacola after that, since I already knew that I was going to go to this aviation med training. So there, that's where they teach you not only combat medicine, dealing with wounds that you receive, you learn a bit about ballistics and the kind of damage that you teach you the type of wound you do, and doing it treating under a stressful situation in combat. They also teach you the tenets of the Marine Corps. You learn the history of the Marine Corps. You learn how to operate as a squad and a platoon and a company in the Marine Corps. So that way, if you end up with a infantry unit, you kind of fit in where you need to. Because everybody in the Marine Corps, including your corpsman, is an infantryman first. So that's what they're basically teaching us, the basics of infantry.
Right. So you're saying with the Marine Corps, okay, so like, I know that, for the people that don't know, like, I mean, I really don't know, I know that there's different parts of the military. Well, I'm not going to take it back to the beginning. So like, you were in the Navy.
Yeah.
Like this, the Navy, Marines, Army, and, is that it?
The Air Force and
Air
Force were all the services we had at the time, and now you also have the Space Force.
Okay, yeah. Okay, yeah, I did hear that. So, okay, what is the difference between all of those? I just know that Navy and water.
Initially, if you really go back in history, we had two services. We had the Army and the Navy.
Okay. Land and water.
The Coast Guard was brought on as a coastal defense thing later on in our country, so then it was three services. Around the time aircraft showed up, when the Navy was established, there was a small group within the Navy that was established called the Marine Corps. Okay. So the Navy, for the longest time, established each individual part of it as a corps. You had the Navy, you had the Marine Corps, you had the Medical Corps, you had the Nursing Corps, you had the Engineering Corps. Basically, everything was a corps within the Navy. So the Marine Corps was a part of it, and it still is today. Then the Army added the Army Air Force, and then that split off sometime, I want to say it was in the 50s, split off as a separate branch of its own.
The Air Force?
The Air Force, right. So technically, within our military, you have the Army, the Air Force, the Navy, which includes the Marine Corps. They're actually part of the Department of the Navy. And then you have the Space Force and Coast Guard. Okay. So, since the Marine Corps is part of the Navy, there's some services they don't provide themselves. Like, they don't have combat engineers like what they have in the Army, where they also not only demolition munitions, they also build.
Is that what the Marine
Corps? The combat engineer only does demolition.
Because I was going to say, because like, me personally, I don't really understand why we need to Marine. Because like, what does the Marine Corps do? Like,
Marine Corps is an amphibious assault force. The Marine Corps and the Navy are basically our military, is our government's way of reaching out, projecting for or military strength.
Okay.
If a conflict happens anywhere around the world, and we are able to physically land troops first, it's going to be the Navy bringing the Marine Corps there. Marine Corps landing, and the Navy providing them artillery support,
okay.
hospital support, and all that stuff.
Right.
And then once it becomes a sustained operation, Army and the Air Force come in and play the role.
Okay. So let's get back to your the transitioning part right now. So I know that a lot of people that come home from the military suffer with PTSD. How did that affect you?
So the stuff that I was talking about that I was doing, like that weird stuff,
Right.
was actually small signs of that PTSD.
Right.
I didn't realize it was happening. The first time I actually was diagnosed with potential PTSD was around the time I was getting out. I actually
Before you even got out of the Navy.
yeah, I was actually kind of in panic.
Right.
Initially, I was going to stay in, do 20. My ex-wife convinced me to get out because she wanted to stay where family was and everything else, and she knew that if we stayed in, we could be anywhere.
Right.
So I got out, or was getting out, and around about 6 months before I got out, I became really depressed, like really upset about things. I would get angry because things weren't going the way I wanted them to go. And I attempted to hurt myself because I couldn't get things done.
Right.
The psychologist that I met with at my clinic was like, hey, you heard about what happened to me, and you tried to take a bunch of medications to hurt yourself. And we could talk to her. She was the first one that was like, she goes, well, I definitely say you got some depression inside because you didn't have shit, but I also think you might have some PTSD. She goes, I'm just going to write potential. The paperwork, she goes, I know you're trying to get hired on with the fire department. I don't want them to not hire you because I write forms, especially when I don't have enough time to sit and talk.
Right. So go ahead.
I got out, went to work for Loudoun County, and I eventually went to work for the Federal Fire Service. About a year after I got out, I lost about a year. I said first one was 6 months after I got out. I lost a friend in the fire department to a training incident. The next month, a good friend of mine growing up from high school was killed by an intruder in her house. And then the following month, January on Election Day, or on Inauguration Day for Barack Obama, my buddy had taken alternate route home because everybody worked out. So I lost like 3 friends. I was still dealing with the loss of one of my best friends in high school. He died in Afghanistan on my 3rd attempt. So I never got to go home for his funeral and all that. And I was dealing with survivor's guilt and all that. And I want to say it was about a year after I got out, we were doing stuff at work. We were getting a fire truck. And something's breaking the door. I lost my shit. Was my captain, had dealt with combat veterans in her time as in the fire service. She realized what was going on, pulled me aside, and she was like, definitely can't be doing this. You can't be snapping.
For real.
At work, she was like, you need to go talk to somebody. So I attempted to go see somebody at the VA. My first appointment was scheduled 6 months out from the date that I contacted you, so it wasn't even scheduled until January 2010. I arrived from my appointment at like 5:30 in the morning, so I could find parking. I waited around there at the VA hospital for 2 hours just for them to tell me that my appointment had been canceled.
Damn.
And it went like that for my next couple times that they scheduled me, and I thought it was like the fucking VA did.
Right. So haven't you got any help for your PTSD?
I did. It took my new wife.
Yeah. They cut out.
She was very insistent. She realized both with my time in the military and then further exasperating things with the calls that I made in the fire department that I was getting really bad. She was like, I think we have PTSD. I think we talk to somebody. Whether it's a VA, a personal doctor, whatever, you need to do something.
Right.
So in December of 2019, I had set up an appointment with VA, and huge transition from what it was like the first go around.
Right.
When I called them, they had me on, with a doctor 2 weeks after I called. They actually had a clinical psychologist assigned to the clinic. So when I met with him, I gave him a tip with her. I literally broke down in her office. I explained everything that I had been through, both in the military. It was the first time I had talked about a lot of that stuff.
Right.
And she was like, I'm not even going to say potential. She goes, you have potential.
Right.
She goes, both from your time in the military. And she goes, you made it worse. And she goes, no offense, man, I'm really bad about this. She goes, you didn't deal with that, and then didn't deal with other things that you dealt with in the fire department, and your divorce and everything else. And she goes, you got full-blown PTSD, severe depression, severe anxiety. She's like, I'm getting you assigned to a social worker, so there's actually a social worker in the VA that I got assigned to, and they got me set up. Initially, I told them I didn't want to try medications.
Right.
I just, heard bad things about it. I was like, I don't want to do that stuff.
So what was y'all telling you they were doing? Because
therapy. I mean, just talking like.
Yeah, talking.
I told her the biggest thing is I realized I was drinking more to deal with it, but I didn't want to get into something else just to keep medicating.
Right.
Live my life without the alcohol, without other medication.
Right. So about the alcohol part. So was that developed in the military, or was that something before the military?
Yes, and yeah, it was more in the military. I drank prior to the military, but never heavily. Like every now and then I have like a good time with friends because I was 20. I was 24 when I joined the military. So from 21 to 24, I would go out drinking with friends and stuff on the weekends, but I would never do anything stupid.
Right.
I wouldn't drive drunk or do any of that.
Drink responsibly.
I did, yeah, definitely.
Drink responsibly.
I ran so many bad calls with people in the fire department and drinking and driving that it just.
Yeah. The reason why I asked that is because, like I said, my brother was in the military, and my brother went into the military straight out of high school. So I mean, I'm not gonna say he wasn't drinking, but he wasn't drinking. But when he came home, that's all he did. That's all he did was drink.
Yeah.
And even like today now he's calmed down on it, but he still drinks, and it's from the military, from him being the Navy.
So I would get home from work because working for the fire department on shift now. And basically I transitioned from one job that was high stress to another job that was high stress. And I would get home at 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock in the morning. Once I got the kids to daycare off to school, my 2 older ones, I cracked beer open. And I pretty much have a beer in my hand from that time until I went to bed.
Yeah.
Never really getting drunk. I always kept it, as I said, steady.
Right. You gotta function throughout the day.
Yeah. But I was still drinking more than I liked. My
Right.
father was an alcoholic. He suffered from, I realize now as a kid, going from being a kid to going into adult PTSD myself. I realized my dad was, and that was his way of doing it.
Right.
Alcohol.
And see, I kind of feel like that too, because when you see my dad grow up, because my dad was in the army, and back then, I didn't know what the fuck PTSD was, so I didn't really care. But my dad, he smoked real heavy. He smoked real heavy, get drunk real heavy.
Yes.
So like, I feel like that was like definitely PTSD, because my dad was really mean anyway. So I don't know if it was the military that did it, because he was crazy.
I feel it was, because my dad was the same way. He smoked heavily, drank. Had his first heart attack when I was a kid, like at 44, and died at the age of 52 of a heart attack.
Yeah.
My dad was a door gunner in Vietnam, which the surviving delivery rate for a door gunner was 1 in 3. For every mission we do, one combat out of 3. So my dad had that going on. I remember a few times when I was a kid where he talked about stuff that happened in Vietnam and realized he was talking to me about it, and stop and pick up his drink.
Yeah, see, there was something like that with my dad and my brother. Like, I don't think my dad really went to like any kind of wars, but he probably did because he was on the shit. So he probably did. But my brother, like, they would always do that, and then they would like tell us stories about what was going on and this and that, and then he was like, oh, I need to drink, da da da. And then it just so crazy.
And that's what it be with me. Like, you know, it was. My one neighbor, me and her went to high school together. She lived actually in an apartment where I was. And I was sitting out drinking one night, and I was just keeping it steady. And then she asked me, she was like, hey, what's the worst thing that ever happened to you while you were there? And I started talking to her about it because I was drunk. And I got even more drunk.
Right.
To the point that, like, she had to walk me into my apartment, make sure my kids got into bed. I woke up on my couch, like, how the fuck did I get here?
Right.
I put my kids to bed because I know my wife was at work. It wasn't until the next morning that my friend Christine told me, she'd be like, oh, I helped you get your kids and everything. And she goes, you got really drunk and started crying.
Yeah.
And it was about her, and she knew who he was. It was about my best friend when he died over in Afghanistan. And I was telling her how I had found out. I found out before it came out. I found out through the casualty units.
Right.
So I found out hundreds of thousands of miles away from the family or anybody that I could talk to about it. And I tried to deal with it on my own. I ended up having to go talk to the ship's chaplain, just, like, hey, this is what I just found out. My best friend from high school was killed in a roadside attack. His wife's getting ready to have their twins, and I'm this isn't, why is this, that was my biggest thing with my guilt. Like, how come I got to go?
Yeah.
And you see all my kids, and raise not only the two, or one, and then the second one, and then eventually the four,
Right.
more than I had.
Yeah.
How come I got to do that? And that just, that was the first time I kind of realized I was having it.
Yeah.
And then one night I went out with, this is when I was separated from my first wife. I was drinking with the girl that I was on a date with. And I drove her home one time. I then drove 10 miles from her house back to my place, drunk. Realized the next morning when I got up, when I went up and looked at my truck, that I had run into a guardrail at some point. And
Don't drink and drive.
yeah, don't.
Don't drink and drive.
I was lucky that I happened to be out at a time of night in a neighborhood that was dead. Like, everybody goes to bed by like 11 o'clock. So it
Yeah.
wasn't. But that was where I was really having that problem with the alcohol. And me and Becky got together, kind of calmed down a little bit more, especially when we had our first daughter and then our second one. But I was still getting, like, especially around the right people, I'd be severely drunk.
Yeah.
Actually,
But it'd be like a control drunk though.
it would. And it
Because
was,
even
it
how I
was with
feel
other
now.
combat vets that I could talk with.
Right. Because even now when I see you, we be hanging out around here, and you don't really be like sloppy drunk anymore.
No, I don't.
Like, I've really never seen you. I don't even think I've seen you drunk for real. I've seen you drink.
I've
never
never
seen you
but I've never been like
all over the place.
Yeah. And that's, part of it's because now I'm medication and all, but
Right.
when I talked to her in December of 2019, that's what it was. I want to get this drinking way under control, not just somewhat under control. I don't want to have these nights where I start talking to somebody